The stars looked the same as they always did through the viewports of the horizon's edge. Captain Jake Morrison had made this run to New Haven Colony dozens of times, and the routine had become almost boring. His ship carried supplies, mail, and replacement parts for the farming equipment that kept 3 million colonists fed. Jake sipped his coffee and watched the blue-green planet grow larger on the screen. "Captain, I'm picking up something weird," said Dr. Lisa Grant from the sensor station. She wasn't usually on the bridge, but she liked to watch when they approached a planet. Her medical bay was quiet during transit, so she often helped with other duties. Jake set down his coffee. "Weird how? There's a ship in orbit around New Haven, big one, and it's not broadcasting any identification codes." Lisa's fingers moved across her console, bringing up more data. "It's at least 3 times our size." Jake felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Unknown ships were never good news, especially ones that didn't identify themselves. "Try hailing them. Standard greeting protocol." Lisa opened a channel and sent out the greeting in a dozen common languages. They waited. No response came back. Down on New Haven, Colony Administrator Amy Walsh was having a very bad morning. She stood in the command center, staring at the massive alien vessel that had appeared in orbit 2 hours ago. Her security chief, Commander Kyle Brooks, stood beside her with his arms crossed. "They're not responding to any of our messages," Kyle said. His voice was calm, but Amy could see the tension in his shoulders. Kyle had been a soldier before he came to New Haven, and soldiers knew danger when they saw it. The communication console suddenly came to life. A face appeared on the screen, and Amy had to stop herself from stepping back. The alien had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its elongated head. Its skin was pale blue and seemed to shimmer in the light. "I am War Master Zethran of the Velkar Dominion," the alien said. The translation software turned his words into English, though his tone needed no translation. It was pure arrogance. "This system now belongs to the Dominion. You will surrender your colony immediately." Amy found her voice. "This is a peaceful colony. We have no quarrel with you. Perhaps we can discuss this diplomatically." Zethran's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "There is nothing to discuss. We have claimed thousands of worlds. Your species is unknown to us, which means you are weak and insignificant. Surrender or be destroyed." Kyle stepped forward. "And if we refuse?" The alien's mouth curved into what might have been a smile. "Then we will show you what happens to those who defy the Dominion." The screen went dark. Amy and Kyle looked at each other. They both knew what was coming. "Get everyone to the shelters," Amy said. "And send out a distress signal to Earth. Send it everywhere. Someone needs to know what's happening here." Jake watched in horror as the alien ship fired a single shot at one of New Haven's orbital stations. The unmanned station, used for weather monitoring and communication, simply vanished in a ball of fire. "They just destroyed the station," Lisa whispered. "They didn't even warn anyone first." Jake's hands moved automatically, bringing up the ship's communication systems. "We need to warn Earth right now." His fingers flew across the controls, setting up an emergency broadcast. He poured everything into it. The alien ship, the destruction, the coordinates. He sent it out on every frequency he could access, aimed at Earth and every human colony in between. "Message away," he said, "but I don't know if it'll reach anyone before they jam our signals." As if hearing him, the alien ship began broadcasting some kind of interference. The horizon's edge shuddered as the wave passed through it and half their systems went dark. "They're blocking all communications," Lisa reported. "We're cut off." Jake made a decision. "Then we're going down to help." "Hold on." He pushed the ship into a steep dive toward New Haven's atmosphere. The horizon's edge wasn't a warship, but it was fast and it could land anywhere. If they were going to be stuck here, they might as well be useful. On the surface, Kyle Brooks was organizing the defense. New Haven had never been meant as a military installation. They had some security personnel, some hunting rifles, and a few old military surplus vehicles. Against an alien invasion force, it seemed laughable. The first alien dropships came down like meteors. They landed in the fields outside the main settlement, and troops poured out. Kyle watched through his binoculars and counted. 50 aliens in the first wave, maybe more coming. The Velkar soldiers moved in tight formation, their weapons held ready. They wore armor that gleamed in the sunlight, and they moved with the confidence of troops who had never lost a battle. Kyle divided his people into small groups. He knew they couldn't win a straight fight, so they wouldn't fight straight.
"Hit and run," he told them.
"Make them work for every meter." Make them scared. The first skirmish happened near the water treatment plant. Kyle's team let the Velkar soldiers get close, then opened fire from hidden positions. 3 aliens went down before the others could react. Kyle's people were already moving to their next position before the Velkar could return fire. Zethrin watched the reports from his command ship with growing irritation. His ground forces were meeting resistance. Not much, but more than expected. These humans were supposed to be easy prey. They came from a soft world with gentle gravity and no real predators. His intelligence data had said so. War Master, we've captured one of the humans, an officer reported. Shall we interrogate? Yes, Zethrin said. I want to know why they're resisting. They must know they cannot win. The prisoner was a young farmer named Tom who had been caught trying to evacuate his family. The Velkar interrogator asked him about Earth, about human military capabilities, about anything that might be useful. Tom told them the truth because he didn't know any military secrets. He told them about Earth's weather, about earthquakes and hurricanes. He told them about the animals, about bears and lions and sharks. He told them about diseases and how humans got sick and recovered. He told them about gravity, about how Earth pulled harder than most planets. The interrogator listened and felt something cold settle in his chest. This didn't sound like a soft world at all. This sounded like the kind of planet his people would classify as a death trap. Jake landed the horizon's edge in a clearing near the main settlement. He and Lisa grabbed what supplies they could carry and headed for the command center. They found Amy and Kyle coordinating the defense, looking exhausted but determined. We got a message out to Earth before they jammed us, Jake reported. I don't know if anyone heard it, but we tried. Amy nodded. Thank you. Every ship we have is either destroyed or grounded. You might be our only hope of getting help. Kyle was looking at a map covered in marks showing Velkar positions. They're not as tough as they think they are, he said. They bleed, they die. And they're starting to look nervous. Outside, the Velkar forces were indeed nervous. They had expected quick victory. But these humans kept fighting. They hit from unexpected angles. They used terrain cleverly, and they didn't give up even when wounded. One Velkar soldier had been shocked when a human he'd shot kept fighting long enough to take down 2 more soldiers before finally collapsing. War Master Zethrin studied the data coming in from the surface. Human physiology reports were troubling. They were denser than expected, stronger than their appearance suggested, and they had an alarming capacity to endure pain. In their world, this Earth place sounded absolutely terrifying. Perhaps, Zethrin thought with growing unease, the Velkar Dominion had made a mistake. Perhaps these humans weren't weak at all. Perhaps they were something far more dangerous. Survivors from a world that tried to kill them every single day. But it was too late to back down now. The Dominion did not retreat. They would crush these humans and take their colony no matter the cost. Deep in space, Jake's emergency message raced toward Earth at faster than light speed, carrying a desperate plea for help from a colony under attack. The question was simple. Would anyone hear it in time? The message reached Earth 3 days after Jake Morrison sent it. The emergency beacon triggered alerts across every military installation on the planet and sent the United Earth Council into immediate session. Within an hour, Admiral Frank Chen stood before the council members, his uniform crisp despite being pulled from his bed at 3 a.m. New Haven is under attack, he said without preamble. Unknown hostile force. 3 million civilians at risk. We need to mobilize now. The council members looked at each other. They had lived in peace for so long that the word mobilize felt strange. But the data from Jake's message was clear. An alien empire had attacked without warning and without mercy. How soon can you reach them? Asked Council Chairman Richard Price. 4 days if we push the engines hard, Frank said. I'm taking the 3rd Fleet. 20 warships including the Defiant. It's everything we have in range. Make it happen, Admiral. Frank left the council chambers and immediately began issuing orders. His fleet would need supplies, ammunition, and every pilot who could fly. He called in Lieutenant Sophie Martinez, his best fighter pilot, and dozens of others. Within 6 hours, ships were launching from Earth orbit, forming up for the jump to Tau Ceti. Before they left, Frank met with Dr. Peter Nguyen, a xenoanthropologist who studied alien cultures. Peter had been analyzing the brief glimpse they'd gotten of the Velkar from Jake's transmission. What do we know about them? Frank asked. Peter pulled up holographic displays showing the Velkar ship and soldiers. They're called the Velkar Dominion. We've picked up some of their broadcasts over the years, but never made contact. They've conquered at least 40 different species that we know of. They prefer intimidation over diplomacy. How do they fight? Traditionally, formations, heavy armor, overwhelming force. They win through superior numbers and firepower. But Admiral, there's something else you should know. Peter pulled up another display, this one showing a galactic map with planets marked in different colors. This is a classification system the Velkar use. They rate planets by danger level. Frank studied the map. Most planets were green or yellow. A few were orange. Only one was marked in deep red. Let me guess, Earth? Earth is what they would call a Class 12 deathworld, Peter said. It means a planet so hostile that most species couldn't survive there without extensive protection. High gravity, aggressive megafauna, constant natural disasters, deadly microorganisms. The Velkar have never fought anyone from a Class 12 world because most species from such planets don't survive long enough to develop space travel. Frank smiled grimly. But we did. Yes, and that means the Velkar have no idea what they're dealing with. They think humans are soft because they're judging us by their own standards. They don't understand that we evolved in constant warfare with our own planet. Frank nodded. Then let's go teach them about deathworlders. The Third Fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving Earth behind. In the cramped pilot-ready room aboard the Defiant, Sophie Martinez briefed her squadron. She was young, barely 25, but she had logged more combat hours in simulators than most pilots saw in a lifetime. The enemy has superior numbers, she told her pilots. They have better shields and probably better weapons. But we have one advantage. We're from Earth. We can handle G-forces that would knock them unconscious. We can make maneuvers they can't even imagine. Use that, her squadron nodded. They were scared, but they were ready. Back on New Haven, Kyle Brooks was discovering the same thing Sophie already knew. Humans had advantages the Velkar didn't expect. His guerrilla fighters had been hitting the alien forces for 3 days straight, and the Velkar were showing signs of exhaustion. They can't operate at night, Kyle reported to Amy during one of their brief meetings. Their eyes don't adjust to darkness like ours do. They need artificial light everywhere. What else? Amy asked, taking notes. They're slow. They tire easily. I think their homeworld must have lighter gravity than ours because they struggle with heavy equipment. Kyle paused. And they're terrified of our wildlife. That last part had been almost funny if the situation wasn't so serious. A Velkar patrol had panicked when they encountered a pack of wild dogs. To the aliens, the dogs looked like monsters. To the humans, they were just dogs. Lisa Grant had been studying captured Velkar equipment and wounded soldiers that Kyle's forces had taken. What she found disturbed her. Their biology is fragile, she told Jake. They have redundant organs, sure, but their immune systems are almost non-existent. They've lived in sterile environments for so long that they never developed resistance to diseases. Are you saying we could make them sick? We already are. Our bacteria is attacking them. Nothing fatal yet, but they're getting infections from minor wounds that would barely bother us. Lisa looked troubled. Jake, I think they come from a world that was easy. No predators, no diseases, no challenges. They never had to fight to survive. Jake understood what she was saying. Humans had clawed their way up from prey animals to apex predators. They had fought saber-toothed cats and cave bears. They had survived ice ages and plagues. They had earned their place at the top of Earth's food chain through millions of years of brutal natural selection. The Velkar, it seemed, had not. War Master Zethrin was receiving reports that made him increasingly uneasy. His forces controlled most of the colony's infrastructure, but they couldn't move freely. Human resistance fighters struck constantly. His soldiers were getting sick with mysterious ailments. And the interrogation reports about Earth were deeply troubling. He called a meeting with his senior officers. Show me everything we know about the human homeworld. The data painted a picture of a nightmare planet. Earth's gravity was 30% higher than the Velkar homeworld. Its atmosphere contained more oxygen, making it prone to massive fires. It had extreme weather patterns, shifting tectonic plates, and thousands of species that could kill with venom, teeth, or disease. How did they survive this? Zethrin asked. They adapted, one of his science officers replied. Their bodies are incredibly dense and durable. Their immune systems are aggressive. Their pain tolerance is extreme. And their psychology evolved to handle constant threat. What do you mean? They experience fear, War Master, but they act anyway. It's called courage. Most species freeze or flee when confronted with danger. Humans often attack. Zethrin sat back in his command chair. The Velkar Dominion had built its empire by attacking species from comfortable worlds, species that surrendered rather than fight. Humans were different. Humans were dangerous. Send a priority message to the Dominion command, he said. Request reinforcements immediately. His officers looked surprised. The Velkar never asked for reinforcements against primitive species, but they moved to obey. In orbit, one of Zethrin's patrol ships detected an anomaly. Multiple objects were emerging from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. The ship's sensors counted them. 20 vessels, human design, military configuration. The patrol ship sent an alert and then tried to run. It didn't make it. A human destroyer caught it within minutes and reduced it to debris with a weapons barrage that seemed almost excessive in its violence. Aboard the Defiant, Admiral Frank Chen watched the tactical display as his fleet entered the Tau Ceti system. He could see the Velkar forces spread across the system. 10 warships in orbit around New Haven, dozens of support craft, and an unknown number of ground troops. All ships, battle formation Delta, Frank ordered. Fighter wings, prepare for launch. Let's show these invaders what happens when you threaten humans. Sophie Martinez strapped into her fighter and felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. Her squadron launched from the Defiant's hangar bay, joining fighters from the other carriers. Over 200 small craft formed up ready to strike. Remember, Sophie told her squadron over the comm, they've never fought anyone from a death world before. Let's make this educational. Down on New Haven, Kyle Brooks received word that the Earth fleet had arrived. He grabbed his radio and broadcast to all his resistance cells. Help is here. Hold on just a little longer. Amy Walsh allowed herself a moment of relief. They had survived. Now they just needed to win. War Master Zethrin saw the human fleet approaching and felt confident despite his earlier concerns. He had 10 warships to their 20, but his ships were larger and his crews were experienced conquerors. These humans might be tougher than expected on the ground, but space combat was different. In space, the Velkar Dominion was supreme. All ships engage the enemy, he commanded. Show them the price of resistance. The two fleets accelerated toward each other, weapons charging, shields powering up. The battle for New Haven was about to begin, and neither side fully understood what they were facing. But the Velkar were about to learn a hard lesson. Humans didn't just survive their death world. They thrived on it. And everything about how humans fought reflected the brutal planet that had forged them into the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The space between the two fleets shrank rapidly as both sides rushed toward engagement range. Admiral Frank Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the tactical display with the calm expression of a man who had fought in 3 colonial conflicts. His crew moved efficiently around him, calling out status reports and target acquisitions. Admiral, the enemy is maintaining standard battle formation, reported his tactical officer. Their flagship is in the center, protected by screening vessels. Frank nodded. Predictable. They've won so many easy victories that they've forgotten how to adapt. He opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships execute Plan Gamma on my mark. Show them what chaos looks like. The human fleet suddenly broke formation. Instead of maintaining the organized line of battle that military doctrine suggested, the ships scattered in different directions. Some dove, some climbed, some simply accelerated forward at angles that seemed random. On the Velkar flagship, Admiral Corvin watched the human fleet dissolve into disorder and smiled. They panic already. All ships maintain formation and pick your targets. This will be over quickly. But Sophie Martinez wasn't panicking. She was hunting. Her fighter wing dove toward the Velkar fleet at an angle that put tremendous force on her body. The G-forces would have knocked out most species, but Sophie had trained in Earth's gravity her whole life. This was nothing. Lock onto their escort ships, she told her squadron. Hit their engines. Make them sitting ducks for our capital ships. Her fighters screamed through space, weaving between Velkar defensive fire. The alien gunners couldn't track targets moving so erratically. Sophie's targeting computer locked onto a Velkar escort and she fired her missiles. They struck the engine section and the escort spun out of control. All across the battlefield, human fighters were doing the same thing. They moved too fast, turned too sharply, and took risks that seemed suicidal. But they were from Earth, where risk was simply called life. Captain Beth Turner commanded the destroyer Relentless, and she had a reputation for living up to her ship's name. When the fleet scattered, She took her ship on a course that would have made a navigation instructor resign in horror. She used New Haven's moon for a gravity slingshot, whipping around it at a speed that subjected her crew to 8 times Earth's gravity. Her crew gritted their teeth and stayed conscious through sheer stubbornness. The Velkar crew on the ship they targeted never saw them coming. The Relentless emerged from behind the moon and fired every weapon at point-blank range into the Velkar vessel's flank. The alien ship's shields collapsed and hull plates tore away like paper. "Target destroyed," Beth reported calmly, as if she hadn't just performed a maneuver that would kill most species. Moving to next target, Admiral Corvin was no longer smiling. His organized formation was being torn apart by human ships that moved like angry wasps. His escort vessels were crippled or destroyed. His crews were reporting that the human weapons were somehow bypassing their shields. What Corvin didn't know was that engineer Nick Sullivan had spent the last 5 years developing weapons specifically designed to counter energy shield technology. His railguns fired solid projectiles at a fraction of light speed. Most shields were optimized to stop energy weapons, not physical objects moving that fast. The railgun rounds punched through Velkar shields like they weren't even there. The Defiant moved into the heart of the battle, its railguns firing continuously. Each shot sent a tungsten rod screaming toward a Velkar ship. The impacts were devastating. One escort simply broke in half when a railgun round went through its central power core. "This is impossible," Corvin muttered, watching his fleet disintegrate. "They're primitives. They shouldn't have this technology." His tactical officer looked up from his console, 4 eyes wide with fear. "Admiral, they're boarding the Vanguard." Corvin pulled up the feed from the Vanguard, one of his heavy cruisers. Human Marines had somehow gotten onto the ship. The video showed armored figures moving through corridors, their movements quick and aggressive. They were led by Colonel Miranda Hayes, though Corvin didn't know her name yet. Miranda had led her orbital drop Marines directly into the Vanguard's hangar bay. It was a crazy maneuver, using individual drop pods that the Velkar point defense systems had mostly ignored because they were so small. Now Miranda and her team were inside the enemy ship, and they were very angry about what had happened to New Haven. "Move fast, hit hard," Miranda told her Marines over the comm. "These aliens attacked civilians. Let's teach them why that's a bad idea." The Velkar security teams tried to stop them. The aliens had numbers and they had defensive positions. But they had never fought anyone like humans. The Marines used breaching charges that were far too powerful for the Velkar ship's internal structure. They threw grenades around corners. They accepted wounds that would have stopped other species and kept fighting anyway. One Marine, Private Danny Chen, took a plasma shot to the shoulder that burned through his armor. He stumbled, recovered, and shot the Velkar soldier who had hit him. Then he kept advancing, ignoring the pain that should have sent him into shock. "Chen, fall back and get medical attention," Miranda ordered. "With respect, ma'am, I'm good," Danny replied, his voice tight with pain but determined. "Not leaving my squad." Miranda would have smiled if she wasn't busy breaching the next door. Earth didn't raise quitters. Back in space, the battle was turning into a rout. Half the Velkar fleet was destroyed or disabled. The survivors were trying to retreat, but human ships pursued them relentlessly. Frank Chen opened a channel to the Velkar flagship. "Velkar Commander, this is Admiral Chen of Earth. Surrender now or be destroyed." Corvin appeared on the screen, his 4 eyes showing emotions Frank couldn't read. "You cannot win. The Dominion is vast. More ships will come. Then we'll destroy them too," Frank said flatly. "You attacked human civilians without provocation. You chose war. Now you're learning what humans do to those who threaten our families." Sophie Martinez had just finished destroying another escort when she picked up a Velkar carrier trying to escape toward the outer system. The carrier had launched all its fighters and was now running with minimal escort. "Wolf Squadron with me," Sophie said. "That carrier doesn't leave this system." She pushed her fighter to maximum thrust, chasing the fleeing carrier. Her fighter's engines were military surplus that the Velkar would have considered unsafe, because they could fail catastrophically if pushed too hard. But they could also go faster than any Velkar engine, so Sophie accepted the risk. The chase took her deep into the outer system, past the orbit of Tau Ceti's gas giants. The carrier was fast, but Sophie was faster and angrier. She came within weapons range and started hitting the carrier's engines with precise shots. The carrier tried to return fire, but Sophie's piloting made her almost impossible to hit. She jinked left, rolled right, dove down, always moving, never predictable. It was the kind of flying that only worked if you had reflexes honed by millions of years of avoiding predators. Finally, one of her shots hit something critical. The carrier's engines exploded and the ship began to tumble. Sophie circled it once, confirming the kill, then turned back toward New Haven. Down on the planet's surface, the Velkar ground forces were hearing the news from orbit. Their fleet was losing. Their ships were dying. And now they were trapped on a hostile world with enemies all around them. War Master Zethrin stood in his command post and faced a reality he had never imagined. The Velkar Dominion was being beaten by a species they had considered weak. His troops were demoralized and sick. His air support was gone. His supply ships would never arrive. Kyle Brooks chose that moment to contact him directly. War Master Zethrin, this is Commander Kyle Brooks of New Haven. Your fleet is destroyed. Your troops are surrounded. Surrender now and we'll treat you according to the laws of war. Zethrin looked at his officers. They looked back at him with expressions that said they knew the war was lost. What guarantee do we have? My word, Kyle said simply. Humans keep their promises. We'll treat your wounded. We'll hold your soldiers as prisoners until this is resolved. But if you keep fighting, we'll show you exactly how dangerous deathworlders can be. Zethrin had read the reports about Earth. He knew what humans could do. We surrender, he said quietly. All across New Haven, Velkar troops laid down their weapons. Human forces moved in to secure them, and Lisa Grant immediately started organizing medical care for both human and Velkar wounded. In orbit, Admiral Corvin made the same calculation. His flagship was the only major Velkar vessel still functional, and it was surrounded by human ships. We surrender, he told Frank Chen. Frank nodded. Smart choice. Prepare to be boarded. Any hostile action and we will respond with overwhelming force. The battle for New Haven was over. It had lasted less than 6 hours from the moment the human fleet arrived. The Velkar Dominion had sent a war fleet to conquer a colony, and had instead suffered their first military defeat in over a century. But this was just the beginning. Deep in Velkar space, Supreme Admiral Vectress was gathering a massive reinforcement fleet. The Dominion had been embarrassed, and they would not accept defeat. Vectress commanded over 100 warships, enough to crush any opposition, or so he thought. He had not yet realized that the Velkar Dominion had... Commander Greg Palmer sat in the intelligence section of the Defiant, staring at streams of encrypted Velkar communications. He had been a codebreaker before the war, spending quiet days analyzing alien languages and communication patterns. Now his skills were critically important. Admiral, I've cracked their military codes, Greg reported to Frank Chen, and you need to hear this immediately. Frank arrived in the intelligence section within minutes. What do you have? Greg pulled up a holographic display showing Velkar fleet movements. Supreme Admiral Vectress is coming with a reinforcement fleet. Over 100 warships. They'll be here in less than 48 hours. Frank studied the display silently. 100 ships against his 20. The odds were not good, even with humanity's advantages. What else? They're not just coming to reclaim New Haven, Greg continued. I've intercepted orders. They plan to make an example of the colony. Complete destruction. They want to show the galaxy what happens when you resist the Dominion. Frank's jaw tightened. Then we stop them here. Send a message to Earth requesting any available reinforcements, and get me a tactical analysis of the Velkar approach vectors. Greg nodded and got to work. But both men knew that reinforcements from Earth couldn't arrive in time. The Third Fleet would have to face this alone. Admiral Frank made a decision that would have seemed insane to any traditional military commander. Instead of waiting in a defensive position around New Haven, he divided his fleet into hunting packs and sent them throughout the system to find and destroy every remaining Velkar vessel. We can't let them regroup or establish supply lines, he told his captains during the briefing. Every Velkar ship still operating in this system is a threat. Hunt them down. Captain Beth Turner took the Relentless and 2 other destroyers toward the outer planets where Velkar scouts were trying to hide. Sophie Martinez led her fighter wings on sweeps through the asteroid belt, searching for Velkar ships that had gone dark. It was Sophie who found the first group. 3 Velkar support ships hiding behind a large asteroid, their systems powered down to avoid detection. She marked their position and called in Beth's destroyers. The Velkar ships detected the human vessels coming and tried to run. But they were slow cargo ships never meant for combat. The destroyers caught them easily. Beth opened a comm channel and gave them one chance to surrender. 2 of the 3 took it. The 3rd tried to fight and was destroyed in under a minute. All across the Tau Ceti system, similar scenes played out. Human ships hunted Velkar vessels with a determination that bordered on obsession. Every alien ship captured meant fewer resources for the incoming fleet. Every ship destroyed meant the message was clear. Humans would not forgive what happened to New Haven. On the planet's surface, the situation was tense but stable. Kyle Brooks had taken responsibility for guarding the Velkar prisoners. It was a strange role for him, going from guerrilla fighter to jailer, but he did it professionally. War Master Zethrin sat in a secured facility that had once been a school. He watched human guards patrol outside and tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong. His troops were being treated well, which confused him. The Dominion did not treat prisoners well. Why were humans different? Kyle came to speak with him one afternoon. Zethrin was brought to a meeting room where the human commander waited with a translator device. "Why do you treat us with respect?" Zethrin asked through the translator. "We attacked your civilians. We destroyed your property. By all rights, you should execute us." Kyle leaned back in his chair. "Because we're not like you. Humans believe in laws even in war. You surrendered, which means you're protected under our conventions. Besides, this war was started by your leaders, not by you personally. But we obeyed those orders. Yes, and you'll face consequences for that. But those consequences won't include torture or execution." Kyle paused. "Tell me about your homeworld, War Master." Zethrin seemed surprised by the question. "It is called Velkara. It is a beautiful world, warm, stable. We have no dangerous weather. Our largest predators are smaller than your dogs." "Sounds peaceful." "It is. That is why the Dominion grew strong. We had no challenges, so we developed technology and culture. We spread across the stars because nothing held us back." Kyle nodded slowly. "That's the difference. Earth held us back constantly. Earthquakes, hurricanes, predators that could kill us with a single bite. Diseases that wiped out entire populations. We had to fight for every single day of survival. This made you strong," Zethrin said quietly. "It made us survivors. And survivors don't give up when someone attacks their families." Lisa Grant was treating wounded Velkar soldiers when she discovered something important. Many of them were suffering from infections that should have been minor. Their immune systems simply couldn't handle the bacteria present in New Haven's environment. She called in her human medical staff. "We need to help them. These infections will kill them if we don't intervene." One of her nurses looked skeptical. "They're the enemy, Doctor. They're prisoners under our care," Lisa said firmly. "Which means we treat them. That's not negotiable." She worked for hours treating Velkar soldiers with human antibiotics modified for their biology. It was delicate work, but she was determined. Many of the Velkar soldiers had never experienced kindness from an enemy before. They didn't know how to process it. One young Velkar soldier named Kelthar spoke to Lisa through a translator. "Why help us? We would not help you if the situation was reversed." Lisa looked at him while adjusting his IV line. "Because we're better than that. Humans learned a long time ago that cruelty creates more cruelty. Compassion is harder, but it's the only way to actually end conflicts." Meanwhile, Helen Price, a civilian mining engineer, had been working with Kyle's forces to create defensive positions in case the Velkar tried to land more troops. She knew the colony's infrastructure better than anyone and turned mining equipment into improvised weapons. "This drill can punch through hull armor," she explained to a group of defenders. "If any dropships try to land, we can disable them before the troops get out." Helen had lost her brother in the initial Velkar attack. She could have been consumed by hatred. But instead she channeled her anger into protecting others. It was very human, turning grief into action. Private Danny Chen was in medical recovering from his shoulder wound when news came that the Velkar reinforcement fleet had been detected entering the system. Despite Lisa's orders to stay in bed, Danny immediately got up and reported to his unit. "Chen, you're wounded," Colonel Miranda Hayes told him. "I can still shoot, ma'am," Danny replied. "And you're going to need every Marine you have." Miranda looked at the young private. He was barely 20 years old, injured, and absolutely determined to fight. She saw herself at that age stubborn and brave. "Fine, but you stay with the reserve unit. And if I see you taking unnecessary risks, I'm sending you back to medical." "Yes, ma'am." As the human fleet regrouped around New Haven, Admiral Frank Chen reviewed Greg Palmer's latest intelligence. The Velkar reinforcement fleet was massive, but it was also predictable. They were coming straight in, confident in their numbers. They haven't learned, Frank said quietly. They still think this is about ships and firepower. What is it about, Admiral? Asked his executive officer. It's about will, about determination, about what you're fighting for. Frank looked at the tactical display showing New Haven. They're fighting for conquest and glory. We're fighting for our homes and families. That's why we'll win. Sophie Martinez was in the pilot ready room when the alert came. 100 Velkar warships approaching. Her squadron gathered around her looking nervous but ready. I won't lie to you, Sophie said. The odds are bad, but odds don't account for skill, training, or pure stubbornness. Those Velkar pilots come from a soft world. They've never had to fight for survival. We have. Every single day of our lives, we've been fighting Earth's gravity, Earth's weather, Earth's challenges. We're stronger, faster, and tougher than they can imagine. She looked at each pilot in turn. We're from Earth. That means we're from the single most dangerous planet in the known galaxy. Let's show these invaders why you don't mess with deathworlders. The pilots cheered. They were scared, yes, but they were also ready. Fear didn't stop humans. It never had. Supreme Admiral Vectress watched the tactical display from his flagship, the Dominator. He saw the 20 human ships waiting near New Haven and felt confident. This battle would restore Velkar honor and teach these upstart humans their place. All ships battle formation Alpha, he commanded. Prepare for engagement. This time we will show no mercy. But as his fleet moved forward, Vectress noticed something in the reports from the first battle. Human ships had moved in ways that should have been impossible. Human pilots had endured forces that should have killed them. Human soldiers had fought with an aggression that seemed almost supernatural. For the first time, Vectress felt a small seed of doubt. Perhaps these humans were more dangerous than anyone had realized. Perhaps attacking them had been a mistake, but it was too late for doubt now. The two fleets were on a collision course, and the largest space battle in human history was about to begin. The Velkar Dominion was about to learn that numbers meant nothing when you were facing species that had survived millions of years on a... Supreme Admiral Vectress watched his fleet advance toward the 20 human ships and felt his confidence waver. Something was wrong. The humans weren't running. They weren't even trying to form a defensive position. They were simply waiting. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship, his communications officer reported. Put it through. Admiral Frank Chen's face appeared on the screen. He looked calm, almost casual, which somehow made him more threatening. Supreme Admiral Vectress, this is Admiral Chen of Earth. I'm going to give you one chance to withdraw peacefully. Vectress's four eyes narrowed. You dare speak to me of peace? You destroyed our forces. You hold our warriors prisoner. You attacked a civilian colony without warning, Frank replied, his voice hardening. You threatened to destroy millions of innocent people. We defended ourselves. Now you have a choice. Leave this system and negotiate a peace, or we'll destroy your fleet too. Vectress almost laughed. 20 ships against 100. You cannot win, human. Mathematics is against you. Mathematics doesn't account for skill, determination, or the fact that we're willing to die to protect our people. Can you say the same? Frank leaned forward. Last chance, Admiral. Withdraw now. Vectress cut the transmission. All ships attack formation. Destroy them. The Velkar fleet surged forward, but then something unexpected happened. The human ships didn't scatter like before. Instead, they formed a tight defensive sphere around New Haven, with fighter wings deploying in layers. They're protecting the colony, Vectress realized. They won't abandon it even to save themselves. His tactical officer nodded. Their formation is solid. We'll have to go through them to reach the planet. Then we go through them. Sophie Martinez led the first fighter wave toward the advancing Velkar fleet. Her squadron had been reinforced with every available pilot, including injured ones who refused to stay grounded. Over 300 fighters launched from human carriers, swarming toward the Velkar fleet like angry hornets. Remember the plan, Sophie told her pilots. We're not trying to win the fight. We're buying time. Time for what, she didn't say. But Greg Palmer had been working on something in the intelligence section, and Admiral Chen had promised them a surprise. The fighter engagement was brutal. Velkar fighters outnumbered the humans 3-1, but Sophie's pilots flew with desperate skill. They used asteroids for cover, executed impossible maneuvers, and fought with the knowledge that their families were on the planet below. Danny Chen, flying despite his injured shoulder, managed to take down 2 Velkar fighters before his ship was hit. He ejected just before his fighter exploded, his emergency beacon active. "Sorry, Sophie," he transmitted. "I'm out. Stay alive, Danny," Sophie replied. "We'll pick you up after we win." Captain Beth Turner commanded the defensive line with the Relentless positioned directly in the Velkar fleet's path. Her orders were simple: hold the line no matter what. When 3 Velkar heavy cruisers focused their fire on her ship, she didn't retreat. She angled her shields to deflect what she could and returned fire with everything she had. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 5, her damage control officer reported. "Shields at 40%. Keep firing," Beth ordered calmly. "We don't need to last long, just long enough." On the planet's surface, Kyle Brooks was coordinating orbital defense platforms that Helen Price had modified. The mining engineer had turned civilian infrastructure into military weapons with impressive efficiency. "Ready when you are, Admiral," Kyle reported to Frank Chen. Admiral Frank had been waiting for the Velkar fleet to commit fully to the attack. Now they were in position, focused on breaking through the human defensive line. He opened a secure channel to Greg Palmer. "Execute the plan." Greg had spent the last 2 days analyzing every piece of Velkar technology they'd captured. He'd found something interesting. All Velkar ships used the same navigation and communication protocols, and those protocols had a vulnerability. His fingers flew across his console, sending a specially crafted signal toward the Velkar fleet. It was a virus disguised as routine fleet coordination data. The Velkar point defense systems let it through because it looked harmless. The virus spread through the Velkar network like wildfire. Suddenly, 50 Velkar ships reported critical navigation failures. Their engines shut down or started firing in random directions. Formations dissolved into chaos as ships tried to avoid colliding with each other. "Now," Frank ordered. The human fleet, which had been fighting defensively, suddenly went on the attack. Ships that had seemed crippled revealed themselves to be fully functional. Hidden weapons platforms around New Haven activated. Orbital defense systems opened fire. The Velkar fleet found itself under attack from all directions at once. Their numerical advantage meant nothing when their ships couldn't maneuver properly. Human vessels moved through the chaos like sharks, targeting specific systems and leaving crippled ships floating in space. Vectress watched his fleet fall apart and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: fear. This wasn't how battles were supposed to go. His forces had overwhelming numbers and superior firepower, but the humans fought like nothing he'd ever encountered. They took damage that should have destroyed them and kept fighting. They executed maneuvers that should have been impossible. They never gave up. "Admiral, we're receiving another transmission from the human commander," his communications officer said nervously. Frank Chen appeared on screen again. This time he looked tired but satisfied. "Your fleet is disabled, Admiral. You've lost over half your ships and the rest are drifting. I'm offering terms of surrender." "You would show mercy?" Vectress asked, confused. "We're not monsters. We fight when we have to, but we don't enjoy killing. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. We'll discuss terms." Vectress looked around his bridge. His officers looked back at him with expressions of defeat and confusion. The Velkar Dominion had never surrendered before, but the Dominion had never fought Deathworlders before either. "We accept your terms," Vectress said quietly. 2 hours later, Vectress stood in a shuttle approaching the Defiant. He was accompanied by a small honor guard, all of them unarmed as required by the surrender terms. When they docked and entered the human ship, Vectress immediately felt uncomfortable. The gravity was too strong. The temperature was too high. The air had too much oxygen. This was a ship designed for Deathworlders, and every moment on it reminded him that he was out of his element. Admiral Frank Chen met him in a conference room along with several other humans. Vectress recognized Amy Walsh from New Haven and Commander Kyle Brooks. There was also an older human who introduced himself as Dr. Peter Nguyen. "Please sit," Frank said, gesturing to chairs that had been modified for Velkar physiology. Vectress sat carefully. The gravity made everything difficult. "I must know, how did you defeat us?" "We had overwhelming numbers." Peter Nguyen pulled up a holographic display showing Earth. "This is our homeworld. Study it carefully, Admiral." Vectress watched data scroll past. Earth's gravity, its weather patterns, its predators, its diseases, its geological instability. The more he read, the more he understood. "Your world is a nightmare," he said finally. Our world is home, Amy Walsh corrected him. It's where we evolved, where we learned to survive. Yes, it's dangerous, but that danger made us what we are. Kyle Brooks leaned forward. Every human you fought grew up on a planet that's constantly trying to kill them. We learned to handle high gravity before we can walk. We trained to fight predators as children. We live with the knowledge that disaster could strike at any moment. It makes us tough. It makes us adaptive, and it makes us very, very dangerous when someone threatens our families. Vectress nodded slowly. We have been conquerors for 800 years. We have claimed thousands of worlds, but we have never encountered anyone from a Class 12 death world. How many Class 12 worlds have produced spacefaring civilizations? Frank asked, including yours. Vectress paused. One, just Earth. Most species from such worlds die out before achieving technology. Those few that survive usually lack the resources to leave their planet. But we didn't die out, Lisa Grant said, entering the conference room. She had been invited as the representative of the medical community. We thrived, and we developed technology specifically because our world was so dangerous. We needed better tools to survive. The negotiations lasted 3 days. They were difficult because both sides had very different perspectives on war, peace, and honor. But gradually, an agreement took shape. The Velkar Dominion would withdraw from human space completely. They would pay reparations to New Haven for the damage caused. They would release any human prisoners or slaves held anywhere in the Dominion. And most importantly, they would formally recognize humanity as a sovereign species with full territorial rights. In return, humans would release all Velkar prisoners unharmed. They would share some basic technology to help improve Velkar medical capabilities, and they would agree to a non-aggression treaty with the Dominion. War Master Zethrin was released as part of the agreement. Before he left New Haven, he met with Jake Morrison one final time, the civilian pilot who had started everything by sending out that emergency message. I underestimated you, Zethrin admitted. I saw soft skin and assumed soft warriors. I was wrong.